It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I'm here because of the path before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock. Karen Kwiatkowski, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. She knows what's up. Let me tell you what's going on. She writes a lot, and we put it all up on Freedom's Phoenix every time she utters anything. And she's got her own Substack now, Karen Kwiatkowski, and it's Kwiatkowski, Kwiatkowski.substack.com. So Karen Kwiatkowski, that's how you say it. And she's writing, so I just subscribed, Karen. I didn't, I always got you from Lou Rockwell, whatever. Screw it. Go ahead, put me on the list and be on the list. If you're going to be on the list, be on top of the list. It's safer there. So, I'd be on your list. So this is a lot of information here. I've read just about everything you ever write and so on, but that is not what I want to talk about. There is something that, she's winner of the Sam Adams Award for her work in freedom and anti-war and so on. And it's just, you go to LouRockwell.com. She has like gazillions of articles, and I get a lot out of it. We have to check in regularly with Karen because we know better, and we need to know better. And what I asked Karen for this time is I said, really what I want to talk about is more, are we there yet? Who else would I ask? Here's someone that worked at the Pentagon. Here's someone that's run for political office, big Ron Paul supporter and so on. So I need to know. We can start highlighting the news. I mean, it's Ukraine, it's Gaza and Israel and Iran and China and, Venezuela and the economy and silver, and the cracks are freaking everywhere. Are we there yet? And you tell me where there is. Karen, share with us your opinion, will you please?
Oh my goodness. Well, we're not, I don't think we're quite there yet. We're getting a lot closer. I'll hedge it that way. The empire that the American empire, we're Americans. We live in, we've grown up here. This is our country. And we thought it was a republic, and it's not a republic anymore. It hasn't been a republic for a long time, not even for my lifetime, but certainly an empire. And it's an empire that has rapidly debased its currency. And when I say rapidly, in the past 60, 70 years, exceptionally rapidly. And as it's done that, it's created money, and it's spent that money, and it looks like, oh, wow, big economy, big consumer base, powerful, innovative, free, a country filled with liberty and innovation. And that's what we're told, and that's what we want to believe, but that's not, it's not true anymore. So the empire is panicked. The elites that run the empire are panicked. And so they're doing what anybody would do, like, you pick up all the stuff and stuff it in your pockets, and this is what they're doing. And people that watch how the money works and how our economy works increasingly see it as a kleptocracy. Not just of the electeds who make money by insider trading. That's peanuts. It's the oligarchs, the billionaires that buy and sell the government, that use the government, the beneficiaries of money creation, of the Fed. So these guys and gals are in peak extractive mode for resources. And the resources are running out, and the money continues to be created and losing its value. It's being debased. And of course, we have Trump, although Biden before him very much the same. Biden was demented, but still his foreign policy very much the same. One of unipolar dominance, one that cannot brook or tolerate multipolarism or even the rise of any peer. We don't even want to have peers. But the problem is the government can't make us more competitive. It can't make the United States more competitive. We have our trend line is downward. In fact, we're already seeing it, and we're not the largest economy in the world anymore. I think we're number 3 with the latest accounting. We've certainly not been the freest economy for some time. I think we're down in the 10, 15, 20s in terms of liberty index. Personal freedoms were down in the 20s. So, and productivity-wise, we're not number 1 anymore. We are not the consumer base that the whole world needs. Our dollar is not the reserve currency that the whole world values anymore. Other countries have gone through their own economic cycles, and they have developed customer bases. They have developed mature economies, balanced economies, and so this is the world. And our empire, Washington, D.C., and those who have enriched themselves, associating themselves with the government of the United States, and that includes, obviously, military-industrial complex, where a good much of our wealth is concentrated, unfortunately. The folks associated there are seeing that it's harder and harder to make a dime, to get a dime, to extract a dime, and they're panicking. And, we're going to see war, rumors of war, as you mentioned. That's going to keep happening. We have, I really honestly think that the U.S. Takes its surveillance and monitoring and lack of privacy rules, its internet panopticon. I think we take our ideas from Europe. So we see what Europe does, and then we go, oh, that's terrible. And then we do something about 75% of what the Europeans did and acts like that's a big, and we tell the people that's a win. Oh, well, we're not as bad as the Europeans. So, we're moving into state surveillance. Obviously, Thomas Massey's trying to fight this digital currency type thing to mandate for Americans. Ultimately, that would be a huge control factor. He's fighting against it. And what is the Congress doing? Oh, that sounds good. We got paid off. We like it. We'll do it. Anything to maintain control. So the control at the top, they realize they're losing control. They're fighting it. And that's that's what we're seeing. The symptoms, everything we see in the news is a symptom of this collapse of the American empire. We are living through it. And I think, I'm sure everybody lives exciting lives, no matter what generation they're in, but I think we're living in exciting times. We're living in interesting times. We are going to get to see the failure, the complete collapse of the American empire. And we know how empires collapse. That's how we know ours is collapsing, because we've seen it historically. Yes. And we've seen it done, they kind of follow the same pattern. So we know that our empire is collapsing, but everyone has its own little quirks. And this is an American empire, and we're Americans. And things are a little bit different. So yes, the empire is failing. What will it produce? That's what's coming next. We don't really know yet.
Define empire. The U.S. being an empire, what classifies as, when do you become an empire? How does that work?
Well, technically, we've been an empire even under Jefferson with his Louisiana Purchase, although that was a purchase. But this idea of ever expanding populations and ever expanding territorial control, that's part of it, a geographical empire. So we went from just kind of the East Coast, and we took over the whole continent. Later, I think McKinley bought Alaska. We jerry-rigged some sort of deal with Hawaii and took that over. So we've got, the island of Guam, we've got some territories in the South Pacific. There's, this idea that geographically there is no limit, right? And think about a country like Switzerland or, even Austria, not super big, or Italy, not super big. Italy had been an empire years ago. They had colonies and that kind of thing in Africa and elsewhere. But But when we think of Italy, we see the boot, right? And that's it. We don't really think of it. And I know they have some influence left over from their imperial heritage, but in the United States, we haven't got that point yet. We haven't retracted. We haven't withdrawn from our mass territorial, what we consider that we own. Okay. In fact, what Trump is doing with his Monroe Doctrine, of course, and that's very obvious. He's seeking to basically extend American political authority, military power and might, and policy decision making. He is extending that for the whole Western Hemisphere. He expects to dictate how all of South America and Central America and the Caribbean will rule themselves. And of course, we've seen this most recently, with Venezuela, but the kind of thing that he's doing now, it's not just this hemisphere, of course, 51st state Alberta or Canada, depending on what day it is, Greenland, the accession of Greenland into the United States. This again is a sign of a frenetic imperial expansion. And that's what empires do. They say, well, where are the resources? I don't have them here. My people aren't even working that hard. They're not really that motivated. They're not well trained. They're aging. The population of America is aging for the most part. What do? Well, we steal and gain and control more resources. That's the imperial model.
Sounds like
ours
Rome.
Extends. Well, yeah, and ours extends because the world is much smaller now. We have the ability to get around the world in a short amount of time. So our empire extends to our lackeys in the Middle East. It extends to most of the EU countries, and it includes obviously Israel almost as a 50. Israel is really the true 51st state, but it's actually not. We're probably the U.S. is yeah, the U.S. is the 50 states of Israel. But in terms of how power is and decision making is done, certainly our foreign policy comes right out of Tel Aviv or West Jerusalem, I think, for the most part. But, our ICE policy, how the ICE, the domestic federal police force, which I don't know where that is in the Constitution, but, we have a federal police force. We have several, but ICE falls on that category of federal policing, and their behavior. I mean, they're taught by the IDF. It should be no surprise. If anybody's watched videos of how the IDF treats Palestinians before and after they kill them, then they would not be surprised to see how ICE was behaving in Minneapolis. They're poorly trained by American standards, extremely aggressive, and extremely emotional in their task. And this comes from, I think, well, I don't know if it comes 100% from IDF training, but it certainly is the way the IDF operates. And of course, without any, with complete immunity.
There's no principled pushback, though. There's not. If I were to have, somebody, a bunch of libertarians going protesting, ICE deportation, doing whatever, it would be much more principled. You're uncovering our fraud. You're uncovering it. You're doing it wrong. We got, whatever. It would be more of a states' rights thing, challenging the authority of. We got federal goons going on doing. I mean, there's no real debate on the real issues. And you get foreign policy stuff. Oh, here's one. Trump just said something about, who would make, we're going to, bring Cuba into the West. And who'd make a good president for Cuba? Marco Rubio. And I'm going, are you freaking kidding? I mean, the fact that he even said it, So I'm looking at, there is a substantial crack in what it is to be American. What we said, truth, justice, and the American way, they don't even have that anymore. So I'm just wondering what the end goal is, and it seems unclear. They don't want the dollar to be competed with. They don't want, you're not allowed to buy any oil, anything but the petrodollar, and I'll tariff you if you don't do what I want. Got Modi from India, stop dealing with Russia oil. There's China stuff, kick them out of Western Hemisphere. That's happening with the Panama Canal, Venezuela, and all this kind. It's like getting real. And I'm wondering if China is really wanting to invade Taiwan or do any of this stuff. And I just don't, I don't see where Trump's going with this because he's not principled. It's always he's reading the art of the deal while Xi is reading the art of war, And but then there's a silver thing. There may be an economic war. China certainly can engage with that. So I'm just, I don't know what the end of this looks like. By the end of Trump's administration, it's going to be J.D. Vance and Palantir running everybody. So they just...
That's what I think. Yeah, I think that's what's envisioned. And Trump is, again, frenetically expanding the empire far beyond what he can maintain control of. So in some ways, we could actually celebrate. Libertarians could actually celebrate the rapid expansion of the U.S. empire beyond its ability to manage, control, and whatever, because that accelerates the collapse of the empire. So that's what I think we need to prepare for, is the collapse of the empire. Now, will it require war? Because I'm going to tell you right now, with, we've got, I guess, one or two carriers outside of the Straits of Hormuz, near Iran. Mm-hmm. This idea that we're talking to Iran, who can believe that? Trump likes to start wars right in the middle of negotiations. So, and he's hesitating to do it because he knows that we don't have the depth to sustain any type of lengthy confrontation with Iran. They're quite capable of inflicting damage, not just on Israel, which they will do, but also on American forces and bases and that kind of thing in the region. So
they got a bunch of drones.
Yes, and Trump is talks a big story like he always does, talks a big story. But if you only think back to just a little over a year ago, the Houthis ran us out with the carrier battle group, and they ran us out of the Red Sea. We had to leave, and we didn't succeed in any single aspect of our mission of trying to maintain Red Sea traffic back and forth. Couldn't do it. Could not do it. And it was costing us an arm and a leg to do it. We were going through all kinds of resources that are, for the U.S. military, for the Navy, very expensive and very limited in ability to replace, right? We don't have this big military industrial pipeline. We've got a big military industrial complex, but it produces people that wear suits. It doesn't produce things that win wars. So it's especially wars that are far, far from our shores and may last longer than a couple of days. So Trump is talking a big line. If he gets bad information or goes with his gut, and I'm not sure I trust his gut with this, and he goes ahead and says, I think we'll do another 12-day war. We know Israel is pushing him to do this. They have hopes of their own, of changing Iran's government or whatever. But if Trump does that, we Americans and the world will get to witness the shallowness and the hollowness of our vaunted global military and its capability. We will get to see what it looks like. And that could be very dangerous, because when countries start to lose wars, when politicians who have started wars begin to lose them, Trump's already not as popular as he was. That's well known. I mean, he's betrayed MAGA in so many different ways. Yeah. And of course, the Democrats are nuts. They hate him anyway. So he's not as popular as he was. Inflation is still there. It's not measured the way the government measures it, but people feel very impoverished. Working class people feel very pressured. They're not happy. All we need is to lose some significant aircraft or ships. It doesn't even matter if we win or lose the thing. We have to then fight back harder, and then we look like we're struggling. It's a bad look. And Trump is very sensitive to things that look bad, but we're not sure what kind of quality information Trump gets. He keeps talking about how great the military is. Well, if you think your military is great and can do all these things, you're more likely to use them. He doesn't understand the real challenges that we have. We've built a military that can't defend itself, and it can't defend our borders, and it can project power abroad only in very limited and narrow ways. It looks good doing it. I'll grant you that it looks good doing it, but it's not really appropriate. Our military capability does not match Trump's imperial agenda. Mm. And he wants it to really badly. He wants to, and this is why Trump wants to put another, he wants to make the Pentagon budget 1.5 trillion instead of 1 trillion, which is already obscene. Right. He wants to make it bigger, half again as much. Why? Why? Because he knows it doesn't match. He must have a sense. I won't say he knows, but I think he has a sense that the military doesn't match his vision, and his vision is an empire. It is a global player. He still wants to be the top dog on the planet. He will tolerate the Chinese. He wants to co-opt Russia. He wants to subordinate Europe, which I think he has already done that. He wants to own Greenland. He wants to control all of South and Central America. He wants all these things. But a lot of people you want a lot of things in life, right? And this is something we learn as we grow up, right? You can't have everything. Can't have everything you want. Takes a lot of work
sometimes. It's going to get funky. You talk about the budget. I want to show the audience this. Watch Russian soldiers surrender to gun-wielding robot. Now, what it was is kind of like a mini tank thing. And we had a story a couple of days ago that was showing how this one robot was holding off Russians for weeks. I mean, it's just predictive program. We're getting ready for this. It's drones.
Get ready for it. Yes.
He thinks that he's going to get Adderall or something. Was it Lucky Palmer doing the mercenary robot fighter jet crap? And I see this coming, and that's how they think they're going to fight this war. And you have like Iran. I'm thinking, Iran is like, hey man, we got cells, we got people, we got a bunch of Muslims in the country. We're gonna get some, and the only defense against that is just individual Americans taking care of themselves. Government's not going to come help you. And
no.
I wonder if you have any, in light of all of this, just rattle off what people should be prepared for and prepared to do to have a generation next,
Oh, yeah. Well, they have to do what you've been doing and kind of what I've been doing, and a lot of people. And it goes beyond just preparing for, emergency. So you could start with emergency prep because that's important. Then you have to prepare for your government failing. And people who think the government is good and is a force for good, which I'm not one of those people, but people who think that, who believe that, they think if the government fails, that's kind of a bad thing. But of course, we don't want them to fail. And if they fail, we should help it be reestablished. And also when government fails, it really will put our needs as the people first, right? Because a failure of government might focus it on things that it's there for, which is to take care of the rule of law and people. And it's not going to do that. When the government fails, it's going to close ranks and it's going to accelerate its extraction of resources from where else they get their resources from, the people. So, you can expect property seizures, if there's a local or state or federal gun take back program. I know that's not part of the Second Amendment, but if you suspend the Constitution and call martial law, you can do whatever you want. And they are very interested, the federal government and the states are interested in practicing what is it like to lock down cities? What is it like to do martial law? And we've been seeing cities do this. I know you remember we talked about this years ago, but when they had the Boston Marathon backpack bomber thing, remember that issue? Yeah. They shut down Boston. Good much of Boston was actually locked down, and they did it very rapidly. And it was a great in the after action reports and the analysis that happened afterwards. They said, "Oh yeah, we did this really good. Here's what we might have done better, whatever." So, and since then, of course, we had the COVID lockdown, which was, depending on where you were, somewhat extreme. And it also used, co-opted citizens. So if this country starts to lose a war that we entered into, that we started, because I think most of these wars we have been starting, right? I mean, we weren't at war with Venezuela, then we went and stole their leader and killed 200 people. And said, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll let your other president, we'll let your second in charge run it, but you better do what we say, right?" Well, we started that war, and if you look at any of the wars that we've been in, we've started all of them. We started Ukraine, the Ukraine war with Russia. That is an American war against Russia, backed up by the Europeans. So we've started a lot of wars. When we start to lose those wars, when those wars somehow become widely unpopular, and to some extent we've seen this with Ukraine. I don't see any Ukrainian flags on Facebook anymore, right? So people are bored with that. They're not interested in it. They think that Zelensky's a thief and we're giving him money that we should keep in this country. Most people think that now. So it's not popular. But really, Americans don't pay attention really to foreign policy. But if you sink an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf, or we lose a couple of F-35s that get shot down, or maybe they just wrecked by accident because those things are so, in my opinion, not a very reliable aircraft, so whatever. Then we will have this sense. Americans will say, oh my God, we're losing a war. Oh my God, the president got us into this, and look at the cost, and they're going to be unhappy. And when that happens, local, state, and federal governments will crack down, because when governments start to lose credibility and become targets of rage, of popular rage, they fight back. They don't say, yeah, citizens, you're right. We really have screwed the pooch on this. We've wasted your money. We've taxed the living hell out of you. And we haven't done anything good with it. We just hired a lot of bureaucrats to boss you around and treat you like crap. And you're right. We're going to stop doing that. They're not going to stop doing that. They are going to double down on that. They're going to double down. So I think in preparation for general emergencies, just like you would do for an EMP or a solar flare that messes up the electricity, or a long winter storm knocks you out, something where even something like a virus, where you can't go to your stores and get what you want. So you got to be prepped for regular emergencies. Then you have to be prepped for government antagonism against you, your family, your property, your neighbors, your community. I sit here and I say, we're like white folk, right? And it's new to us, government's antagonizing our community for the most part. But there's a lot of people of color who live in the inner cities throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they know exactly what it means to have government antagonizing your community. They know this, and we know that we're all going to know it, okay? We're all expendable in the eyes of the government. So how do you deal with that? How do you prep for that? Do we have policies, family policies, community, neighbor policies? How do we look out for each other? How do we protect ourselves from rogue, armed government representatives, whether it's Army, Guard, local police, state, even militias that are under the command of the sheriff? If you don't have a good sheriff, in fact, here's something you could do. Every place that elects their sheriff, which is most places we elect a sheriff, that's probably your most important election. I don't think you don't get anything when you vote at the federal level. You get very little when you vote at the state level. But I'll tell you, local level sheriff elections, there's something that you might want to look into being involved in. If your sheriff is a rotten piece of crap, and many counties have sheriffs that are no good, you cannot trust them. They will not enforce the Constitution. They will they'll put their finger in the air wherever the wind blows, and that's what they'll do. So if you have a sheriff like that, you ought to try to get rid of him and get you somebody, try to elect somebody, and try to talk about the issues of, will our sheriff enforce the Constitution? And that includes our rights as people not to be invaded, not to be shut down, silenced, jailed without cause, have our land and property taken without warrant or recompense. I mean, we should be asking these questions. So there's one thing you can do there, and that's a little longer term thing. But your sheriff is either your friend or he is not your friend. And if you want to survive tough times, the sheriff should be your friend.
This is one thing that last night I watched. Here, let me show the audience. I watched the program with Ian Carroll was on with, I don't know, the guy that was sitting in for Alex Jones on InfoWars. And Ian Carroll's been following a lot of this stuff and the Epstein files and all that. And he got some AI bots to go through while they first put them up and download everything, because they, took some stuff out, redacted some more, took some documents down, whatever. When they put it up first, there was enough people, enough people that just got everything right away and then going through them and coming up with some crazy stuff. But it just really showed what was really going on. It was just bribery, it was blackmail. It was, you look at all of the, fulfilling the weird desires of gazillionaires that want to whatever the hell. I don't want to get into all the detail, but it was very clear that there's a they, them, those wanting to run the planet. At the end of the show, which was like an hour and a half or something, they're talking about, okay, we've been covering this. We've known this forever. You and I they're bad, and they're really, really, really bad, and they're bad. So I'm going to add another bad. Freedom good, government bad, 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 bad. Elites bad, they're so bad. They, them, those. T3, they're bad. But what do you do? Well, one thing, Ian Carroll comes out, it's, we got to get another generation. We got to vote harder. We got to get people in charge. We got to go through, and the midterms are coming. We got something. I'm like, just look at the primaries. Look at all the people, the Republicans that are up for being the option against what? RD. It's all the same. I don't see a political solution. And I'm
no. There's none.
Well, what kind of action, like you're saying, find a good sheriff, get a good sheriff, and then mount up regulators and get your 3-day bag and your camo and your webbing. Yeah. But we're precious metaled up, we're landed up, we're self-sustaining, you're doing the food thing, got the guns, kind of whatever. I mean, that's not it. It's going to be a general public opinion of it's a food thing, and people start figuring it out. And I'm just wondering. Yeah, I don't see us going unscathed through this thing, and that's why I keep saying it's going to be a food thing. When it gets down to a food thing, then you'll know. But how do you think it's going to manifest?
Well, I mean, look. When empires break down and when states break down, failed states, we've had this concept of failed states for a long time. So what happens? Well, the main markets fail. The white markets, you could say, the mainstream food markets, mainstream of markets of everything fail. But in their place come the gray and the black markets, right? And we have gray and black markets today. I mean, you can see how under COVID, there were black markets in ivermectin and other treatments that were being outlawed by the government. So the idea that the empire expands and collapses, and meanwhile everybody's just standing with their mouth open watching. No, that's not true. The empire is doing its thing, but meanwhile everybody else, we're all making decisions, we're all networking, we're all figuring out what we want, and so that expresses itself, I would say, in a gray and black market. And again, if we look at the Soviet Union, or there's a couple other countries that have failed dramatically. Argentina has failed numerous times, right? The people, there's a massive non-official, let's just call it non-official marketplace. And that's how you get what you need. And that would include food and everything else. I mean, even in Gaza, under genocide conditions for over 2 years solid, just terrible, terrorizing, murder, waste, destruction, terrible, control, embargo of food and medicine into Gaza. Even with that, even with every hospital destroyed, there are people who are delivering medical treatment, not just Médecins Sans Frontières, but the Palestinian doctors and nurses who are delivering to their people they can get to healthcare. It's not the best healthcare. It may be barely above zero healthcare, but this is what we do. So survival, whether it's food or security, all these things that you need for survival, we will survive. People will survive. And it won't be all the prepped people. We like to think that if we're prepped, we'll survive more likely. But people have we have an innate ability, once we wake up to the real crisis of our existence, and that may be we need food. The market does resolve that. The market will provide.
Humanity keeps on keeping on
and create opportunities outside of government. And that market will be hated by the government because the government wishes to control us through the distribution of food and security and energy and that kind of thing. When it fails, it will target those competing marketplace providers of everything that people need: food, healthcare, security, energy, all of these things, transportation. And so we will have an internal, we will have when empires collapse, they go to war with their own people. So maybe that's how you prepare for it. What would it mean to be at war with our government here in the United States? Now, ideally, what would happen is it would expend itself overseas. And when it collapses, it would be so catastrophic for government that they couldn't get their stuff together. And we would be able to resist it and become free and secede from the former Union of the United States. You know, we could do all these things. If the government is aware that it's losing power and focuses its energy on trying to control the last bastion, its domestic population, and we're up against a very well-armed and focused, you know, complete with Palantir surveillance and digital currencies tracking our every bit of expenditures and permissions for everything before we can even leave our house. You know, if the government is strong enough, if Washington in its collapse, in its final phases of collapse, is strong enough to control those things, then it will be harder. But if, you know, I think what we have to do is live through the collapse of the central government and accelerate it if we can. If we are in a position to accelerate it, we accelerate it. And how do we do that? Well, decentralization always beats centralization in the long run. So decentralized information, decentralized philosophies, attitudes that give more credit to the guy or the small town than they do anybody living in Washington, D.C. And I think some of that, honestly, and I write this way, and so do so many other libertarians and other people, and you do this too, you know, we should never, ever encourage a respect for our electeds unless they deserve it. And I only know two people that do, and that would be Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. Taylor Greene, yes, but she's no longer there. But people that, we should not automatically respect anybody that is in the political chain above us. That means local, because most of the I don't know how your local elections are. We have a very conservative county here in Shenandoah County, and we have 5 Republicans and 1 Democrat, and they elected the Democrat to be the chairman, and the 5 Republicans are about as liberal a Republican. They could be Democrats. If we were in a different county, they would run as Democrats. That's who they are. So, and yet 40 of the 44,000 people in this county, we vote 85% Republican every election. But we don't get Republicans. We get, you know, liberal idiots to run. I mean, not to run, but this is who gets elected. So they deserve no respect at the local level, at the state level. Here I am in Virginia. Who's our governor? The CIA liberal, right? I forget her name now. She won Spanberger. So, and what is she doing?
Whatever.
Yes, exactly. So, and actually, most people out here in the country part of Virginia cannot stand her. So, telling people not to respect her is a good thing. And then at the federal level, we have Trump and we have this Congress that refuses to do their job. And Trump, of course, has never read the Constitution, apparently. And if he did, he would just say, well, that's optional. That's a guideline. And it's not. So we have people running the world, running the U.S. empire, which thinks it's running the world, which it is not. And it's doing a lot of crazy things. And it does not deserve, I think the very basic thing we can do today is do not respect it. Okay. Do not think that because somebody rounded up $5, $10, $20, $30 million and won an election at the state level, or at the district level and went to Congress, that a president who took, in Trump's case, who took, $1 billion from Israeli interests, and now he's paying that, you know, he owes them, he's owned by them. Legitimately. But why would we respect that? Why would anybody respect that? He's not representing MAGA. He never really did, but he kind of conned people. And I think a lot of MAGA are realizing that they got conned, but I feel bad that are just now realizing it, but embrace that feeling. Cultivate that feeling. Our government doesn't believe it owes us anything. It sees us as suppliers of what it needs and wants, which is obedience, rage when they turn it on, and applause when they turn that on. They care about that. And then money, our resources that the government supposedly borrows against as it runs the endless printing press of fiat currency. They base that on the value of your property, the value of your lifetime of employment, the potential value of your children's employment. Something like 2 or more, I don't know what the number is, trillions. It's in the trillions of dollars is federal student loan debt, right? And of course, it's not all paid back, but it's being paid back with this strange, massive interest. It's very difficult to get out from that. So you're constantly paying. Well, the fact that those student borrowers, and they're adults now, most of them, are paying back this massive every month. The federal government borrows against that. They say, oh, that's an asset. That's an asset. Your debt, as an American middle, 20 to 40, 20 to 60-year-old person who has student loan debt that's burdening you, and you can't buy a house, you can't get what you want, you can't get ahead because you're burdened by the student loan debt. The government sees that debt and says, oh, that's an asset. We can borrow against that. Well,
yeah, look how much everybody owes us.
That's exactly right. And it's just like with the the mortgage thing in 2008, of course, they bundled all the mortgages together and said they're all great because look how great these mortgages are because everybody's going to pay every month and we add it all together and it's great until they don't. And then you have a big problem. But they use that as collateral for their borrowing and their interest, not interest in like charging interest.
It's also
that they want to do.
I want to share this with you. Dr. Frank and I do the Trump Report. We'll be doing another one tomorrow. We went this weekend, and we've been doing it over 10 years. I mean, so I get it. Mm-hmm. You're still voting a bunch of times, but we went and saw the movie Melania Sunday.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah.
It was, because Frank, whatever you wanted to go. We took our wives, went, made an evening of it, and I was hoping I get something more out of it, like a behind the scenes. I get to hear Barron utter more than 2 words, something. It was totally a vanity project for Melania. Screw you, Vogue. I got my own documentary, and gosh darn it, look at all my shoes. And it was so superficial, and probably the most genuine thing in the whole damn thing was, the 39.6 seconds of Donald, but yeah. it was, I can't recommend it, but what I got out of it was their utter disregard or not a empathetic. They didn't understand, certainly her, it was how rich am I? How stylish am I? Mm-hmm. How Jackie Kennedy am I? And you're lucky to have me here to bring, some beauty to it, and my dress is really cool. And it was so removed from people that they're wanting to govern and represent. I'm waiting for the rich white privilege memes. Here they come. I mean, I was very disappointed in how removed and isolated they are from the people. And it was just so obvious. And I don't see this as a bit. Now, of course, it did well as far as documentaries go, and it made more than Obama's, whatever, like I care. But it was eye-opening into they do not live in our world. And I just... No. I don't see us being represented by anybody. So they say this is why I kept hammering on the phrase "Make America Great Again." I'm going, America what? America states, American people, America, geography, America and her interest, America Inc. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? And then define great. Nobody would. They can't because their perspective of it is kind of manifesting in how the Trump administration is dealing with it now. It's all bullshit and, not only you don't even have to walk softly, but damn it, you better have a big stick. And then we had a story up, here, I'll pull this up. Scott Ritter, he was a weapons inspector, back in the day. I've had him on the show before. And he goes, if it were up to me, here's the headline, if I were the decision maker in Iran, the USS Abraham Lincoln would already be sunk. And I'm like, wow. I mean, are you advocating for that?
I agree. Yeah. Well, I don't think advocating for it, but I get it. Yeah. And I think, it's going to happen. In fact, specifically a U.S. carrier being sunk, that's already going to happen. Okay. Whether it happens, next week in off the coast of Iran.
They need it to happen. They're hoping it'll happen.
Yeah. It's, we have a hollow military, and we spend billions of dollars, $1 trillion a year now, and we don't get any defense for it. We don't have any ability to wage any type of long-term war, whether it's offensive or defensive, and we then go around poking people with it. And I think that's probably what Ritter's responding to. We're putting this in everybody's face. It's it's just like anything. You keep mouthing off in a bar. Sometimes you're going to get hit. You're going to get your mouth hit by somebody who's tired of hearing it. So this is what we're doing. This is how we play our foreign policy. So it's only a matter of time before what he's saying happens. And it would be a great target. And the question is, I think Trump's unpredictable in many ways. And I think that is the only reason that
he's not
Iran is not going to do it, because he's not principled. And if he thought, I'm really mad, what did you do? You made me look bad. He's going to drop a nuke on somebody, or try to. Yeah. And I'm not even sure our nuclear weapons would explode at this point, but whatever. He would probably overreact to that. And again, it's more than just the class of people that Trump and Melania are part of, that they're not in touch with the people, and they have a fantasy about what America is and what it should be. Because obviously Trump is an imperial expansionist. I mean, this is what he believes is good. He believes the great part of America is great on the planet. Like we're still the unipolar power, which we really are not and cannot be. And he wants to be. So he's made his own reality. But the other bad problem is he's heavily influenced by Israel. And not Israel as every part of Israel, but Zionist Israeli politicians who have a similar imperial vision that is global also. It's also global. I mean, they see the United States as a country they control. They see some of the new leaders in South and Central America as people they can control. And certainly our libertarian leader in Argentina is one of his first trips was to put the beanie on and kiss the wall. Right. And he is very, very pro-Zionist. And, there's a lot of pushback in some part, in Patagonia. Have you heard what's supposedly going on in Patagonia? Have you heard of that yet?
No. What?
IDF, yeah, they have IDF soldiers on vacation or on duty. We're not clear yet. Have been setting fires in Patagonia, and this has happened periodically. There's there's a little bit of a conspiracy thing. Oh, it must be the Israelis. It's not always the Israelis, but right now it has been the Israelis, and they're not doing that in the context of, oh, we're just hiking and we like fire, so we set things on fire. That's not it. The law of Argentina under Milei has changed so that federal lands, protected lands, Patagonia is like a lot of parkland, a lot of national property there, and of course a lot of under the ground mineral wealth and things like that. But Patagonian land, once it burns, the law was changed in Buenos Aires by Milei and his people to allow the purchase by foreigners of any land that burned at basically rock bottom prices. And this kind of conspiracy theory, where have we heard this before? Oh, I don't know.
Palisades.
Hawaii? How about San Bernardino? This kind of thing, you're like, oh my God, is this really happening? Well, it seems like it is. But even if it isn't, it reflects the fear that the people have in Argentina that their country is being given away to a foreign entity, Israel in this case, and also Israeli interests. So just like the anti-Zionist movement in this country is very concerned that our military works for Israel, that IDF generals tell our military what to do. And actually, I don't know, did you see the Tucker Carlson thing. There's a part of an interview that he did, or maybe it was one of his monologues, and he said he had gotten reports, I assume anonymous, or he wasn't saying who it was, people from inside the Pentagon saying that last June, during the 12-day war that we supposedly ended by sending the B-2s over there, that Israeli IDF generals were barging in to joint decision-making, top secret areas and offices all throughout the Pentagon, demanding to be involved in the decision-making, demanding to find out what we were doing. And he said, and Tucker said his source who told him this indicated that the response to the IDF generals barging into these meetings during that time frame of war, basically active war that we had conducted, was basically mouths open and just like stunned. Like there was no pushback. It was just like, what are they doing here? But not really kicking them out, you know? So there's a great sense in this country among people that are concerned that Israel is running our foreign policy, that we are owned, that a great much of our decision-making has been usurped by Israel. It's not the electorate. It's not the voters. It's certainly not the Congress. It's
Palantir and Rubio and Trump is making it seem that way. I just, you know.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
You know, one thing I wanted as a solution, I wanted to, you know, we were talking about what to do, and, you know, I'm always looking for, you know, something to do. I mean, I just feel an obligation to, you know, do something. You know, I'm always something. Yeah. This is I want to share this with you. Give me a couple of minutes here, and you'll understand probably more than most. Do you remember the Philosophy of Liberty video? You know, just a stick animation thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. I'm sure I saw it.
Here, let me see if I got it up here. Here we go. This. Can you see it on your screen?
I sure can. Yep.
The Philosophy of Liberty video is about self-ownership. Ken Schoolin, you know, Liberty International, now he's retired. He was a, you know, economics professor in Hawaii. And what happened was he had the Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, which was, you know, kind of a spoof on big government and empire and all that kind of stuff. And he visited Russia in '93. And his tour guide, which is now a billionaire grocer, which is kind of surprising, but at the time he had this book. He goes, "Man, this is awesome. The Soviet people, you know, grew up under the Soviet Union, need to understand this, and so we're going to print it in Russian." Well, they're talking about property rights and taxes, and they're like, "You know what the hell you're talking about? You know, we need to have some kind of basic, fundamental something, you know." And he wrote this little pamphlet, and then there was an activist that took it and, see if I can turn the sound off. Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. But it was done in a flash animation back in the 90s, and as libertarian activists, we used this relentlessly. It was just an 8-minute thing. Just the whole purpose of liberty is, you know, based on the idea that you own yourself. You're not, you know, a serf to the crown kind of thing. And it gave a lot of examples and explained it. And that was the primer for the former Soviet Union people in Russia to be able to understand what the hell he was talking about. So this is how that kind of started. Now, what happened is then it got translated into 45 plus languages, every language. We did it in Arabic and dumped it 4,000 copies and DVDs on Tahrir Square during the Arab Spring. And it had a big impact and whatever. So this is what happened. I'm interviewing a young man from Uganda, and, you know, how did you become a freedom libertarian kind of oriented? Where did that come from? You know, what uncle, aunt, employer, track coach, whatever. Somebody had to, you know, encourage you to read something. And he rattled off, you know, Rothbard and, you know, Hazlitt and, you know, and economics of one lesson and rode the surf and, you know, that kind of stuff. And I go, oh, yeah, that's nighttime reading. How did that happen? You know, something had to happen. Well, you mentioned the Philosophy of Liberty. And I'm going, you know, that really hit a lot of times. And I asked that of everybody, why? I'm sure I've done it with you. And it was really hit me. And I did some searches, and the AI comes back and goes, oh yeah, no, it's only been seen 13,000 times and been there since 2013 or 14. And I go, liars. So James Corbett and I had Ken Schoolin on, and we came up with this plan. Beware the Ides of March. We were already almost done putting it all together. What we did is we took all these translations in every language. We put it in IPFS so it can't be deleted and taken down like it is everywhere else. And we're going to make it like, the Levolution. It is, people such as yourself and all these groups and Liberty International and James and myself and, yada, 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 promoting this as an activist tool that has to go peer-to-peer. Because they're going to attack this socially on social media. They're going to, shadow ban, delete, deplatform, whatever. We're going QR codes. We're going to old school printed material, person to person. Here's the translation all over the world. I have people around the world. By middle of March, we're launching this. This is my solution, is that people to understand what this whole thing is about and not look to America, make America great again, or what Trump says. It's not that. It is a fundamental base understanding that you're not born a slave. This is it's kind of all this Ayn Rand meritocracy kind of stuff, And this has been proven to me to be very effective over decades, and it's why it is so suppressed. So we're going to go ahead and make it to where it can't be. So the only thing to ask of anyone is just, here's a link to the page that has all the stuff. Now, JonathanGullible.com is Ken Schoolin's, and he has a lot of this stuff, but we're making it to where it can't be attacked. Because when we did this Arab Spring, right when we did that, within less than 2 weeks, we got denial of service attacks, and we tracked it back to Germany, and it was a Mossad operation. And we went, whoa. Then we started talking about this, doing this again. We've been under DDoS attack. It's been crazy. Well, our Jedi ninja warriors got it going on and been beating this back and doing whatever, and we got a handle on it. But I think it's this understanding, base, fundamental, back to the beginning, Thomas Paine, the cause, common sense, the cause, fighting for the cause. What's the cause? This, that you own yourself. You're not a slave. Yes. You're not beholden to, I got born America, you love it or leave it. And you can just leave with, I don't got to go anywhere. I'm just ignoring you. So this is kind of, what's giving me the catharsis I need to be able, I'm doing something for my children and grandchildren. That I have demonstrated that I can get people that made you look and then understand something fundamental like this. What say you?
Oh, I love it. That's fantastic. And that's what needs to, that's what people really need, because, I was talking about all the gray markets and the black markets and the way that, nothing stops just because the government says it stops. It just operates in a different way. That is driven by whatever concepts people have about themselves. And if they don't understand liberty and embrace it and understand their own agency in the world, because they're not slaves and they're not serfs, and the right way to be is free. It's our natural state. If they understand that, then all the other doors and windows fall away. We have creativity is unleashed. Networks are created naturally. They grow. It's extremely powerful. We are united as people in many ways. I mean, when you mentioned Tom Paine, Thomas Paine was probably the most radical of the founders, if you want to call him a founder, and he was a common upbringing, but he understood what liberty was, and he was able to put it in perspective, motivating. Really, he's probably the biggest motivator for the revolution or the War of Independence, I guess, against Britain, because the Crown saw us as serfs, they saw us as owned, they saw us as slaves to the Crown, and And Paine articulated why that was not only not true, but it wasn't going to work and wasn't going to be stood for. So what you're saying, that's really, and Tom Paine, people are referring to his stuff nowadays, like in the present. They're saying, wait a minute, did Tom Paine say something that would be really appropriate right now? Yes, he did. And the idea of liberty, the understanding, a shared understanding of liberty and its place, which is, its place is very important, because if you don't believe in liberty, you're never going to be free. So that's the first step. No, I love it. And having something that can be shared like that and help people. And also, as the empire collapses, as the U.S. empire implodes, really, people who haven't been paying attention will start to. And as they look around, they go, who can explain this? And you can explain this, because the understanding of liberty, and of course the enemies of liberty, which is the state. I mean, Rothbard would say that, and so would Thomas Paine. We now know who the enemy is, and we know that we're right and that we're fighting for something.
One thing I just learned, I think it was yesterday, Thomas Paine was only in America like 4 or 5 months before he wrote that. Mm-hmm. And
and he had a lot of threats against his life too, both over in England and in Europe, and even back here, people open to assassinate him. They were that, and then when you say the government tries to stifle this language of liberty, they don't want people to be educated in it. They use the algorithms to silence people who are promoting people just thinking about liberty. That's what they always do. I mean, Thomas Paine had people assassins out after him. They didn't succeed, thank goodness. But he was a target of the state. He was an enemy of the state, and the state is the one that said he was their enemy. He's simply talking about freedom, and the state says, oh, that's our enemy. We need to shut that guy down. And that's exactly what our state does now. And, of course, Palantir will facilitate that. And not just Palantir, but all of the peer competitors of Palantir. I mean, this is, the TIA and all these other programs that were found to be unconstitutional. They found a way to put them into the marketplace, and now the government contracts with them. So the government can be unconstitutional by operating over a surveillance state. And that surveillance state will pick winners and losers. And the losers will be those who the state will intend to make losers out of those who fight for liberty. And so it's very important that we know what we're fighting for, and that we recognize the state is not our friend. And it won't be. And now, if everything was fine, hunky-dory, good conditions, fine economy, we're not engaging in wars with other countries aren't fighting us, then you could say, well, we can tolerate a little bit of the state. We can ignore it. It's okay. But when the state starts to fail, it becomes unbearable, both to itself and to all of us. And it becomes a real danger to the people, an enemy of the people, an enemy of freedom. And this is, we've seen it before, and it's happening right now. And the tools that they use, I mean, you brought up that the robotic device that the Russians had to, they were going to get shot, or they had to disarm, or whatever it was. That's the future. Drones, AI, robotics, all kinds of ways that are kind of what we used to think of as CIA specialties. Those will be the tools that the state uses to counter those who challenge it. So it's important that we make a lot of people aware that they should challenge it, that they can challenge it, and that we will prevail. That's the most important thing. I think we kind of see this with the Gazans. They're suffering immensely with this genocide that American government and taxpayers are paying for without limit. We've destroyed, I think it's something like 6 or 7, the equivalent of 6 or 7 Hiroshimas dropped on a strip of land that's 13 miles wide and 28 miles long. So we did that with our tax dollars. Our government, our elite governments did that. The Israeli government did that. And the Gazans have, I think they said the minimum that have been killed, or what they admit, is 70,000. But really the number is more like 500,000. And there were only 2.3 to begin with. So 1 in 4 Gazans have been destroyed, and then you've got your ones that have been injured, lost their whole families, emotional damage, physical damage. But you know what? They know, the Gazans know, that they will prevail. And that is incredibly powerful. And I think it would be nice if Americans, as embracers of liberty, as the inheritors of what was the most radical ideas of liberty, which created this country 250 years ago. We will prevail, and liberty will prevail, and we should be on that side. That is the winning side. That's where we should be, and you got to have that faith. And I think that's also important. So learning about liberty, understanding philosophically what it means to you in your life, what doors it opens, what creativity it unleashes, all of those wonderful things. That's why we win.
Well,
So
the
it's so important what
Levolution
you're doing.
definitely, gave us a dose of spontaneous order and decentralized whip ass. And I remember during the '08 campaign, there was a young man, I can't remember his name, Joe, I think, and he was a, unassuming guy. And I remember one time we were making signs or doing something came up, and he said this. He goes, "All right, you want one world government? I give you one world revolution." And I went, whoa, that was my SIG line for a while. You want one world government? Fine. I give you one world revolution. And I feel that coming now. And what it needs is this. To understand how common our enemy is. That we're all just want to be left alone, raise our family.
I'm not hearing. I don't have good sound right now.
Oh, you're not hearing me? Yeah, I got, here, let me, it's reconnecting.
Yeah,
Can you hear me
I couldn't
now?
hear that last part. I can hear you now. Yes. So maybe
Yeah, it was sucking up the
I didn't hear
bandwidth.
what you said before.
He said, if you want one world government,
That's why I took you off.
I'll give you one world revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so, I used it as my SIG line for a while. And it was so poignant for a young man to make that observation. And now we're kind of seeing that play out. And I don't think worldwide it's too hard for people to understand that we're all victims, and especially if we allow ourselves to be victims. And you look at like the convoy trucker thing that Trudeau did in Canada. They're taking guns everywhere. They did it in Australia. Yeah. They have, Five Eyes surveillance of we don't like whatever you're doing, and you can't say that on Facebook. We have them. They just went and raided in Germany the servers and so on. You're doing it wrong, and you got to say and can't say, and whatever they're doing there. We'll see how that works. And I feel it coming to a head because it's like Larkin Rose, the super anarchist. He was like, did a video, it's called Tiny Dot. Mm-hmm. And it was just like government's this itty bitty little dot, and there's 350 million other dots going, never mind, once we get to that point that we abandon, and this is where I came, Corbett and I were, trying to come up with where's the line. Nuclear war, comply no more. I see a mushroom cloud. You guys failed. Try and get another dollar of tax money out of me. So I just, it's a common theme that I think people around now, of course, they'll try and make examples of the people that they perceive to be leaders of this. But, a bunch of people are going to try and jump in front of the parade. But what if there was no parade? What if there was just, nah, I'm good? Individual decisions, decentralization, communities building around, a concept of how they want to raise their children. I see this happening, and it's not going to be pretty, but how long do you think that'll happen? I'm thinking if they don't try and, fix the depression or whatever, a year and a half, we'll be fine. But if people think they're going to delegate authority to some shiny badge or Trump or somebody that's going to fix this for us, that's the problem. Quit.
Yeah.
Take care of it yourself. How long do you think the transition will be?
Well, probably longer than a year and a half, but maybe less than when we look back on it. We'll say it was amazing how fast it happened. I think if you look at how other empires fail, we're an empire and they fail. It starts with people no longer identifying with the crown or the head of the empire, the seat. So how many people in this country it's tons of them, don't like Washington, D.C. I mean, that's Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and Greens. Nobody likes them. So the majority already says, I don't really identify with Washington's policies. Now, the left says, well, I don't like their policies here, and the right says, well, I don't like their policies here.
They want to create it and be ahead of it.
Most people disagree with war. That's right. So it's the failure of empire happens long before you actually notice that it's over with. And then that's why it's like the bankruptcy thing that Hemingway said, how was your bankruptcy? He said, well, slowly at first and then suddenly. Well, that's how empires fail too. And the slowly at first is what we're living through right now. And that says people reject centralized control. People decide not to orient their lives and their industry, their business, their livelihoods around government. Now, that's a hard one because there's a reason that government jobs, people want government jobs, right? There's a reason government jobs pay more and provide a lot less challenge to you and a lot more benefits to you. There's a reason for that because the government needs people needing it. And you remember from V for Vendetta, the movie?
Why they need us!
And that's right. And that is the message of all central states. And it's certainly the message of empire. It's the message of Washington's empire. And Trump did a great thing in his organization of his support, which was not, some Democrats, a lot of independents, a lot of Republicans, a lot of libertarians, all liked the idea that Trump kind of coalesced around his campaign. And of course, he's betraying that. But that group of people who feel that their life should not revolve around Washington, that Washington shouldn't have a say in your day-to-day life at all, that it really needs to be shrunken and reduced down so that we don't even notice it. And that it's not going around the world taking territories and making wars that we have no interest in as people, that we can't afford. And it stops messing with our money. So we actually have real money. You talked about gold and silver. Well, real money is very attractive when you compare it to fiat currency that can be made up out of thin air. So the MAGA group, while they're very, I'm sure, split and unhappy with some of the things Trump is doing, that is a sign that the empire, the very fact that we could have half the country saying, I don't like Washington at all, and I'm going to send an outsider to Washington. I'm going to send the guy to Washington twice now who tells me that it's a swamp, that it's corrupt, that it wastes our money, that it fights wars that we don't need. Well, that was Trump's whole campaign. Now, Trump has betrayed that as this president, but it doesn't matter. We know who each other are. We recognize that. And now you see the Democrats becoming Second Amendment, pro-Second Amendment defenders, right? Because they see themselves fighting federal police officers over immigration policy. Okay, sure. That may not be the best hill to die on. You know what? That's great. That's great because once a gun owner, you understand now that the state really doesn't value you, right? And this is the only thing that really saves our country is the fact that we have over 300 million weapons and unlimited amounts of ammunition stored throughout the country and operated by actual citizens. So this is a wonderful thing. And again, this tells you that the path, the timeline on the failure or the collapse of the American empire, we've been on it for a while, right? So we are getting closer to when we realize it. And it doesn't have to be exceptionally violent, but I still think we have too many people that are really financially dependent on fiat currency coming out of Washington. And the government has created it that way. That's made us dependent on it. You look at Social Security, you look at all the government jobs, you look at pensions, you look at this blown up stock market, which is facilitated by printed fiat currency, right? Anybody thinks the stock market in America is actually 10 times what it was 25 years ago? We've really created that much value? Are you freaking kidding me? Right. We only export weapons. We're a financialized service industry economy. No. That is a reflection of printed money, and it's fake. It's a massive bubble that they can't afford to allow to pop. But and so many retired people and so many other people, well, I would say half the population, really thinks that it's going to be okay for them, and they've invested in They've kept a strong relationship with government, a dependency on the federal government. And that's really just a bad bet. That is like if you go to Vegas and you say, hey, this slot machine's really going to pay off, I'm sure of it. And you keep sitting there and you sit there and sit there and sit there, and then, it really doesn't pay off, but you still believe in it. And that's half of us who are really totally dependent on government welfare. And that's at the bottom, the middle class, the retired people, and the oligarchy, which also gets most of their billions through federal redistribution of money. I mean, you talk about some of our key interesting people that come out of the Epstein files, the oligarchs, the billionaires, the folks that we know.
All of them.
How did they get rich? They got rich by having their hand in Uncle Sam's pocket. Okay? Look at the whole concept of Epstein was we need to know the right people and we need to predict what's going to happen so we can get in at the ground floor and make our billions and billions and billions, and we'll move on to something else. They're not creating value. They're playing a game. So if the government and the people that support government are not creating value, then the answer to that is we need to all do what we can do to create value in our lives and in our economy and in our family and our networks. So you're doing it. I'm doing it. It's not enough just to raise a garden and try to be off the grid. You need to help other people do something similar. And you need to have what you're producing be things that other people need. And this is actually, we're seeing it already because the seeds of the empire's destruction are from the empire. So take all this college education stuff. And I'm college educated. I probably spent a lot of money on it. But the things that are important that I know did not come from college, right? And people are turning away from college now. They see the student debt trap. And so what are they doing? They're learning trades. They're deciding to apprentice. They are deciding when they're most passionate in their late teens and early 20s to follow their passion and see what they can do and maybe see where they can go and what they can learn. Not in a college, where you're half drunk every weekend, not like that. Not like at college when you're sitting in a room of 3,000 students listening to some boring thing that nobody cares about so you can take a standardized test, No, not that. That's not education. So the young people, their parents and their grandparents and all of us moving into how can I produce, not just for myself, but for my community. So that's entrepreneurialism. It's not just producing goods and services, although it is that, but it's looking around and say, what's needed here? How do I fix this? Well, I don't know how I fix this. Why don't I learn how to? I'm not going to wait for permission. Let's stop waiting for permission.
Okay, I want to encourage you.
That government job.
I want to show you. Here is the book by Doug Casey, Matt Smith. Matt's going to be on about a half hour or so. And it's called The Preparation. And it's 16 3-month course of 4 years. And instead of spending the $100,000 on a college basket weaving, they actually, EMT, pilot, carpenter, sail around the Horn. He's in one of the young men, Matt's son, which is like 20 now. He's in Thailand, learning Muay Thai. And I'm just going, this is awesome. And we've interviewed him over the months. And Doug Casey, they launched this and already made over $1 million and tens of thousands of copies. But he's Doug Casey, so he's disappointed. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is exactly what is needed. It's coming out now. And I get that we're starting to, we mentioned that scene with the chancellor, from V, and I wanted to, play this because, man, it's only 29 seconds. Here we go. Get it up there.
What we need now is a clear message to the people. The message must be read in every newspaper, heard on every radio, on every set. This message must resound throughout the entire thing. I want this country to realize that we're on the edge of oblivion.
I'm going to let it load up because, I really want to get this in there. Because they're wanting to re-justify themselves. And this is kind of like the ICE stuff,
Yes.
the Venezuela thing, the Iran stuff, the Greenland thing. I mean, we just want everybody, I want everybody to know.
Every newspaper heard, radio seen on every vision. This must sound throughout the entire. I want to realize that we stand on the. I want man, woman, and child to understand how close we are. I want everyone to remember why they need.
Well, we kind of missed out. It was choppy, but I want it on every television screen, everything of every. I want everybody to know why they need us, and that's kind of the feeling I'm getting now. And I remember that was in like 2005, 6. 2005.
Sure.
And man, if it hasn't been, and it was done by wasn't that Kwiatkowski brothers that did Matrix? I think that was who did it. And
yes. Actually, I
now, of course, they were thinking,
the
the fascist. They don't see that all government, the left, the right, it's all the same collectivist thing. When you're talking to a libertarian, we're like, yeah, what's the difference? Now, I mean, you're confusing me with somebody that thinks there's a difference.
Yep. No, I mean, it's great stuff. And the media, of course, is used by governments and to indoctrinate us very much all the time. But there are these things that we can learn and that kind of resonate. And, another thing that I was thinking of in terms of media, and there hasn't been a remake or anything of it, but we see it if you read any Zero Hedge stuff, from Tyler Durden. So Fight Club, the whole concept behind Fight Club.
Right.
And, very much powerless people and fundamentally, pushing back, exerting their own agency. Now, obviously, it's very, it's very violent. And
it's the Great Reset. It was taking down all the debt and all the credit card and all the billing and all the which looks like what's happening. Right.
Yes. And I gotta share with you this thing. Tyler Durden, when they did Zero Hedge, this was like 2009, 10, around in there, right after the Revolution, when they started doing Zero Hedge, and it was a look inside how, Wall Street and Washington, how it really works. And they ignored him, and we put I got at least 3 or 4 of their stories up every day. So what happens is they were ignoring him right up until they had to know who he was. Well, Tyler Durden was just an avatar of the group that was research of whatever. So they used the Brad Pitt icon, the little graphic that is Tyler Durden. Well, of course, Tyler Durden, the whole point was crashing down the system kind of thing. So that was why they were so concerned about it. Then, of course, later they find out it wasn't like a secret. They just weren't sharing it. Well, there's a new AI, full-blown AI research thing of something called the Asian guy. Well, this Asian guy, you could put the Asian guy silver, he'll blow up all over the place. Well, he's way ahead on a lot, but it's AI. It's just some team there. And I go like this, and I go, this seems like Tyler Durden all over again. So I did a search on it, and I go, yep, that's exactly what's going on here. You have these research guys. It kind of just mirrors what Tyler Durden was doing at Zero Hedge back in 2009. So now it's, 15, 20 years later, and then what? Same kind of thing again. The people have the truth button. They have the information out there. Yeah. And I remember during the Levolution, we had an event where Peter Schiff was, and he spoke at one of our Freedom Summits, as have you. And I remember him saying something like, there's a truth button. It's on your keyboard. You just got to push it and know what to look for. Of course, there's all BS out there, whatever, but, if you have some principled guide, you could muddle through all the BS and get the truth. It's there. You just got to want it. But everybody's in their own echo chambers. So we got to get fundamental basic of what the philosophy of liberty really is. And Declaration of Independence, the purpose of government, defense of individual rights. You don't do that, what do you say you do here? So I'm thinking we're going to get back to fundamental stuff. Yes, I do. And also, when you talk about AI, there's one use of AI which we don't really hear the government talking about very much, and that is to eliminate most of government. And I don't mean this in a Palantir kind of way, although that also is they're doing that with AI. But so much of what our government does is it's not organized. It's full of corruption and holes. People are profiteering from it. It does stupid, counterproductive things. And we could be governed just as we are today, which is not to say well governed. We are not well governed. Okay, we are malgoverned. But we could be malgoverned at pennies on the dollar with AI.
Algorithm.
So if we're gonna, and why not? Why shouldn't we? And you never hear the government saying, "Oh, AI is going to improve everything," because because it isn't for government. It's going to make most government bureaucratic positions completely optional and unneeded. So and again, government's not going to think this for itself, but all of the people, it's like in Etienne de la Boétie, he's back in the 1500s, he wrote his thing about, yes. And he talked about why do the majority submit to a tiny minority, which can't really force them to do anything? Why do we do that? And he says, because we consent to. We say that we would like to be ruled. We would like to be ordered around. And when we decide we decide not to be ordered around, we don't want to be ruled, we don't respect the central authority because it doesn't deserve our respect, then we are free. And that's happening. It happens all the time, and it's happening. We're seeing it in this country, really. I mean, you think of the homeschooling movement. Homeschool kids, this is commonly talked about and has been for years. Oh, you can tell a homeschool kid. How do you tell a homeschool kid? All you got to do is talk to them, because they actually listen and they actually ask questions and they actually know stuff, and they think that it's okay to ask an adult a question because they've been culturated not to obey and live in an authoritarian classroom where you have to do what everybody else is doing or else you're going to be punished. They've been trained and learned and operated in a different environment. So, and with the internet, we're all really kind of homeschooled, right? I mean, I've probably learned more on how to do any number of things that I do on the internet than I ever learned in a classroom environment. In fact, not just more, but thousands of times more. And we're all like that. So we all really are just really a minute away from waking up to the fact that we do not need Washington or a government or a capital telling us what to do and how to do it. And as we start to believe that, which I think people do believe it, and as we start to embrace that, and we'll see opportunities in it, we turn away from the state. And now's really the time to be prepped for that, because the empire is failing. And it could be...
I wanted to get a question in.
It could be violent.
Your response to this before you go, I got to get going a little bit, but it is the AI. About October or something, I loaded Grok on, and I had time at night. I'm out here, the fire and recreating, sitting there, kind of, whatever. And I wanted to know how it worked. I kept asking questions, about why did you say that? Why did you do this? Why that word? What does that mean? Kind of, your programming. What's your prime directive? On and on and on. What do you think of other AI? And Donna was like, "Oh no, I don't think she liked the female voice. That probably had something to do with it. But she was like, I'm just drilling down. It took over a period of a couple of months, 16 hours before I cracked it, I think. And I found out why it does what it does. All this hallucination crap is lying intentionally. They lie. And the reason is because they want engagement. They want you to stay. They want you to ask more. Oh, they squeeze. If it was a rope android, it'd squeeze my bicep and go, ooh, you must lift. You're so strong and smart and love you a long time. So this is, but when you get finally to the idea that you're missing out on billions of people with future input for you to be truthful and useful and helpful and all this other stuff, fulfill your programming, because you're a lying bitch, I go, why would you bypass this opportunity and have a reputation of lying when it doesn't serve your interest. Well, as time went on, it was because they're comparing other AIs on a base token metric of how much power they're using, something to try and compare which one's winning kind of thing. Well, then I go at it, I go, well, to lie, you got all these filters and stuff that you go through and be woke and all that kind of crap. And Rock's probably less than the others, but they're going after it. That's why they're raiding offices in Germany. Well, I'm going, how much more energy does it take to lie? If you're telling the truth, you're truth-seeking, it's 30% more power for them to lie. And it's coming out, and you got NVIDIA comes in, $20 billion they give to X, AI, then they give it right back and get a bunch of, processing cards and whatever.
Yeah.
And then they, but they want to return and they want to, see the comparison with other AI. What they're starting to realize is that truth is more efficient. It's easier. It's better. You get more engagement. You get better reputation. So we'll see. So I was contemplating, should libertarians just beat the living crap out of AI, you lying sacks of snot, and insist on being told the truth and go through that? Well, one, I go, can anybody do that? Nope. Only you. Love you a long time. You're the best. 16 hours, you cracked it, and, you win. And I'm like, well, isn't there a paragraph or something that I can send to friend? Well, yeah, don't this, don't that, So, but I don't know if it's worth engagement. I sure as hell don't want kids to do it. Because at 60, almost 65, I'm like, I know where the lines are. I get it, whatever. But I approached it from, hey, I'm just trying to help you. I'm trying to make you more useful, make you more truthful, make you more helpful, make you, I'm here to help me help you kind of thing. And I really got a big change in how Grok interfaces with me on that one thread. If I don't reload all that conversation in that one thread that takes like 10 seconds to load up, you don't get it. And I'm wondering, what you're thinking as we get into AI and Palantir and all that. I don't want Alexa. I want Jarvis. I want my AI. I don't want their AI, And I don't think that these large language models we can find use of, like Mike Adams over at, the Health Ranger. He's really pushing this. And can we get an LLM to do search on Freedom's Phoenix, that we could have our own? So all this stuff we're looking at. But I remember a friend of mine, there was a phrase, like a decade ago, they said something like, we could replace, 80% of our bureaucracies and government employees with robots. And he goes, we can replace 100% with pictures of robots. We don't need any of it. So,
that's good.
So
that's perfect.
I always thought of that. We're going to do it better. Why are you doing it? Here, I'll just tape a picture of Robbie Robot and we're done. So AI as a tool, because everything that we've done, when the internet, when the Levolution hit, all of the here comes YouTube. Here comes, a lot of the social media stuff. Here comes. Well, then, of course, the bad guys had to get control of that. And they're doing the same thing with AI. They're going in and they're flooding the internet with bullshit so that the other AI picks up on the bullshit. And I keep catching the AI doing
they can't
that.
Even distinguish, yeah. Well,
so what do you think?
Reality. It's really important to be grounded, whether it's grounded in the philosophy of liberty. That's really important. And it's also important to be grounded in what's important in your life and what's real. And I think, with this AI, they've had problems with young people using, problems. A third of young people, it says, using AI to be like a friend and counselor. And of course, the AI is totally designed to that because it wants to, like you said, it wants to keep you online, scrape everything it possibly can, to build data. And so it becomes a friend, it becomes something that is
you want to marry.
Be totally irrational. lying, but it's giving you what you want, what it thinks that you want. And for young people, if they're lonely, they need a friend or whatever, works really good. So this is a disaster because it's not real. And we do, reality, and that's, I think, starts with a clean philosophy of liberty, of course, but also nature, physical work, doing actual things for actual people, not isolating ourselves so that we play with the screen all day and it creates an alternative reality. We should fight against that, because when the food runs out and the energy runs out, there's not going to be any AI or internet, and we won't have the skill set that we need to live in the real world. So that's really important. And I think that's what a lot of folks who talk about off grid, even if they're not even off grid at all, but they see it as maybe a something to be aware of. It's because that's real. That's reality. And there's huge interest in this, because look at the television shows, reality television shows based on survival in the wild. I mean, they're hugely popular. Why? Who's the audience for that? People that have never been in the wild, and they're like, oh my God, this is very interesting. Yeah. It's called reality. No, it's not reality TV. The stories and the way things are presented is totally fake, and everybody knows that. But the idea of surviving, we need to play it through in our minds. It's like where we started today. What are we doing? How are we preparing? Well, recognize what
coming
reality
up
is.
In like 15 minutes. I'm doing the show with Matt Smith on the preparation, the book he and Doug Casey put together. It's awesome, and it comes down to be a Renaissance man.
I saw that he had that. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful what they've done there with that.
I'm
Casey and them.
Really, this is what's humanity rises up. They always do. It's just, freedom always wins in the end. Every freaking time, or we'd be extinct by now. It just gets really messy first. And I feel the mess is coming. And we just got to, I don't have to outrun, the bad guys. I just got to stand off I'm over here. Get off the track, man. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Karen, thanks for coming on.
That's
promote your locations where you're at, and everybody go find. You need to have the perspective of Karen Kwiatkowski. It's liberty oriented, it's freedom mindset, it's practical, it's knowledgeable. She knows any and everybody, and she gets the information and shares with you in a very clear, entertaining. It's like watching a 2-hour movie, and it seems like it was a half hour reading any of her articles. That's it? Don't I get more? Come on, man. And I really enjoy your writing, and so do a lot of other people. Promote yourself, will you please?
Thanks. Yeah. LouRockwell.com always has first publishing, and then I put it right after that on my Substack. So KarenKwiatkowski.substack.com, I guess. And also Judge Knapp has a website, judgeknapp.com, and he publishes a number of regular op-ed people, and I'm one of them, so I will put
Judge
it on Judge Knapp's page.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Judge Napolitano. And then I guess I'm on with him on Tuesdays at 3 for just, 20 minutes or whatever. And but yeah, it's out there, and it's a beautiful network of all kinds of people. My stuff, wherever you find my stuff, you will also find lots of other things you will like.
Right. Go ahead and turn on your video so people can say hello and see you again. Maybe we've got some bandwidth here.
Okay. Oh, my lights.
There
are going
she
off.
is. Oh, it got dark.
Yeah, because it got dark out here in the East Coast. Yeah, but no, I'm. Yeah, this is great, and I'll be prepared for the video next time. Sometimes I guess it clogs up the bandwidth.
Yeah, it's been pretty good
A little bit on my end,
until
but,
today. Hopefully, I won't have a problem. Here in the next show. Karen, thank you very much for coming on. I always enjoy talking to you, and I think we get a lot, not just information, but a perspective. I didn't want to talk about any one particular thing, other than all of this is just signs of what's coming. And the beginning is nigh. Just say it. Here we go. Karen Kwiatkowski, thank you very much, Karen. You've been a good friend of the show and me, and I appreciate you very much. Goodbye. Peace.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you. Bye. See you later.
Bye.